This photo was taken in 1871 at the Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts. The girl in the picture is Catherine Doyle, just 9 years old. But if you look closely, her eyes and stiff posture tell a story that doesn't belong to a child. Her case confused doctors of the Victorian era and still remains a mystery today, more than 150 years later. What happened to Catherine can't be explained by medicine or psychology, and perhaps never will. To understand her story, we have to step back into the year 1871. At that time, America was still healing from the Civil War. Boston was crowded with Irish immigrants, including families like the Doyles, who came seeking a better life. Psychiatry was in its earliest and harshest stage. Asylums were grim places where people labeled disturbed were shut away, with little understanding of mental health or child development. Danvers State Hospital, where Catherine would spend her last years, carried that dark reputation. Built on old Salem farmland, its halls were filled with crude treatments, cold baths, restraints, isolation, and questionable experiments. It was here that Catherine became one of the most unusual cases in medical records of the 19th century. Catherine was born in Boston on March 15, 1862, to Irish parents Patrick and Mary Doyle. Patrick worked at the port, unloading ships, while Mary cleaned and cooked in wealthy homes. The family lived in a cramped apartment in Boston's North End, surrounded by Irish neighbors and a strong Catholic community. Catherine's childhood seemed perfectly normal. She played with handmade rag dolls, went to Mass at St. Leonard's, and helped her mother in the kitchen. Teachers described her as bright, polite, and hardworking, though not unusually gifted. Her parents remembered her as a kind and loving child, the light of their small home. Everything changed in September 1869. On the morning of September 14th, Mary Doyle recalled her daughter waking up as if she were no longer the same child. She looked the same, freckled face, curly hair, but something deeper had shifted. She moved differently, spoke in a new, older-sounding voice, and stared at her parents with an expression Mary later described as empty but ancient. Soon, Catherine began showing knowledge no 7-year-old could possibly know. She spoke about historical events, described battles of the Revolutionary War, and quoted Aristotle and Plato with understanding beyond memorization. She could recite obscure Bible passages in perfect Latin, even verses unfamiliar to priests. Father O'Brien from their church tested her and was shocked by her grasp of complex theology. More unsettling, Catherine revealed personal secrets about neighbors, exposing private matters no one had told her. Alongside this strange knowledge came a darker change. She developed a fascination with death and suffering, asking detailed questions about torture, executions, and diseases. She described historical methods of cruelty with chilling precision, often smiling while doing so. Catherine also began harming herself without pain or fear. She scratched her skin until it bled, bit her lips raw, and banged her head against walls. She seemed to find a disturbing sense of relief in these actions. Animals avoided her completely, dogs barked, cats ran, even birds kept away. When her mother asked why, Catherine coldly replied, "They know what I am now, Mommy. They're smarter than you." As months went by, her changes became even more physical. She displayed strength far beyond her size, once breaking an oak chair with her bare hands. She left permanent finger impressions in the family's wooden table. She could stand motionless for hours, even through freezing nights outdoors, without showing discomfort. Her eyes became especially disturbing, often appearing almost black, with people reporting dizziness and fear when looking into them. Desperate, the Doyles first turned to the church. Father O'Brien visited and quickly realized this was not a simple childhood phase. Catherine recited theology with ease, revealed secrets from his past, and spoke in ways that shook his faith. During an attempted exorcism, instead of resisting, she laughed loudly, spoke in multiple voices, and recited the ritual alongside the priest in perfect Latin, anticipating his words. When religion failed, the family sought medical help. They found Dr. Henry Morrison, a Boston physician trained in Europe. At first, he assumed Catherine was an intelligent child suffering from trauma. But after weeks of study, he was unsettled. She spoke about anatomy like a medical student, described rare diseases accurately, and drew disturbing images of skeletons and suffering bodies with surprising skill. She wrote fluently in Latin, Greek, and even basic Egyptian hieroglyphs, languages she had never studied. Dr. Morrison also noted strange physical signs: low body temperature, unusually slow pulse, and even plants withering when she was near. The most alarming moment came one winter night when Patrick found Catherine standing motionless in the snow for hours, her eyes completely black. She calmly told him, "The stars are almost aligned, Father." Catherine never really existed. She was just preparation for something much more important. The next morning, after long discussions with Father O'Brien and Dr. Morrison, the family made the heartbreaking decision to admit her to Danvers State Hospital. Patrick and Mary knew their daughter was beyond their help and possibly a danger to herself and others. Danvers, with its Gothic towers and dark halls, was one of New England's most advanced institutions for mental illness at the time. Catherine was admitted on March 15, 1870, her 8th birthday. She seemed oddly calm, even aware of what was happening. On the way there, she quietly told Dr. Morrison, "You're going to try to photograph me, aren't you? It will be interesting to see what your camera captures." The hospital's chief doctor, Elias Hartwell, expected to find a case of hysteria or developmental disorder. But within minutes, Catherine shocked him by naming details of patients who had died, facts only recorded in private medical files, and by revealing personal secrets from his own life. At first, she was placed in the children's ward, supervised by Sister Margaret O'Connell. But within days, other children began changing in strange ways, sitting silently, staring at walls, and speaking in unison. Several claimed to see the same tall woman dressed in black with hollow eyes. They also repeated personal details about Catherine's life they should never have known. The situation worsened as the children began moving in patterns, sitting in geometric shapes, and reciting words in unknown languages. Disturbed and unable to explain these events, Dr. Hartwell eventually moved Catherine into an isolation room to study her more closely. Catherine was moved into a bare isolation room on the 3rd floor of the East Wing. A single barred window let in little daylight, and the space held only an iron bed, a small table, a chair, and a bucket. This transfer marked the beginning of closer study. Dr. Elias Hartwell, determined to understand her condition, began daily sessions that quickly turned unusual. Instead of answering questions like a normal patient, Catherine often led the conversations herself. She pressed Hartwell with personal questions, pointing out his private fears and memories with unsettling precision. In one session, she recalled in exact detail a childhood accident Hartwell had never shared with anyone: the drowning of a girl named Sarah Mitchell. Her description matched his memories so closely that he began doubting his own peace of mind. Other anomalies surrounded her room. The temperature inside was always colder than the rest of the hospital, no matter how the heating worked. Plants brought in withered within days. Nurses complained of headaches and nightmares after spending time near her, while guards reported the eerie feeling of being watched even when she was asleep. Through the summer and autumn of 1870, Hartwell carried out structured tests. He gave her logic problems, philosophical debates, and historical texts meant for highly educated adults. Catherine excelled at all of them. She identified people in old photographs she could never have known, described their lives with astonishing accuracy, and even began predicting events, such as the exact deaths of patients and the circumstances around them. Each prediction came true. But while her mind seemed to grow stronger, her body weakened. She lost weight, her skin became pale and almost translucent, and her hair turned darker and thicker. Sometimes she froze completely for hours, unmoving but fully aware, her eyes wide open. These rigid states were often accompanied by sudden drops in room temperature, moving objects, and strange voices or sounds reported by staff. In May 1871, Dr. Hartwell decided to photograph her, hoping the camera might capture what the human eye could not. He brought in James Thornton, an experienced medical photographer. On June 15, 1871, Thornton set up his equipment in Catherine's room. From the moment she sat for the picture, he felt the air change. The room grew cold, and he sensed he was capturing something larger than just a child. When the glass plate was developed, the image shocked both men. Catherine appeared as expected, sitting calmly in her chair, but her eyes seemed to follow anyone who looked at the photograph. They had unnatural depth, as if layers stretched endlessly behind them. Strange shapes and shadows appeared in the background that weren't present in the room. Hartwell called in senior doctors to study the photograph. Some thought it was a chemical error, but when control photos were taken under identical conditions, the anomalies only appeared in Catherine's image. Others suggested rare neurological conditions or unusual energy fields could be responsible. Copies were sent to experts across America and Europe, many of whom admitted they had never seen anything like it. After the photograph, Catherine's decline sped up. She entered longer catatonic states, sometimes lasting weeks. Though she stopped eating and drinking, she remained alive far longer than should have been possible. During these episodes, strange phenomena in her room became intense: ice forming on windows in summer, heavy objects thrown across the space, and whispers in unknown languages. By autumn 1871, Catherine was skeletal, her skin nearly transparent and her hair jet black. In September, she entered her final catatonic state. For 6 weeks she lay motionless but conscious, her eyes tracking movement in the room. On November 2, 1871, at just 9 years old, she quietly closed her eyes and died. At that exact moment, the room temperature rose back to normal for the first time in months. Her autopsy revealed no clear cause of death. Her organs were healthy, but her brain showed abnormal development. Some parts advanced far beyond her age, others underdeveloped. Stranger still, her body resisted decomposition for weeks without preservation. When she was buried in the hospital's cemetery, odd reports continued. Plants would not grow on her grave, the ground remained colder than surrounding soil, and visitors spoke of discomfort when passing nearby. Dr. Hartwell continued to publish his observations throughout his career, leaving behind one of the most detailed medical records of an unexplained case in history. Catherine's photograph became famous in psychiatric circles and was studied for decades. Even modern experts struggle to explain her case. Some suggest rare neurological disorders, extreme savant abilities, or unusual brain conditions. Others propose bioelectric anomalies or phenomena science has yet to understand. In 1923, Carl Jung himself reviewed Catherine's photograph and files, suggesting she represented an extreme form of synchronicity, a point where separate realities converged in one person. Modern researchers have added theories, but none fully account for all the documented events, the physical anomalies, the predictions, the environmental effects, and the haunting photograph. Catherine Doyle lived only 9 years, but her case has never been forgotten. Her story remains one of the most carefully documented medical mysteries of the 19th century, raising questions about the limits of science, the mysteries of the human mind, and phenomena we still cannot explain.